today we have 4 rounds in the magazine. Round number 1. It feels like we do this story annually with all those service academies, those dirty little integrity violators. But now 18 folks have been expelled from Kansas' beloved Naval Academy after cheating on a physics exam. So Kate has a little quiz for us, and I sure as shit hope it is not physics related, because I don't know if this is embarrassing to admit aloud to the group. I don't think I've ever taken a physics class in my life.
Really?
I know for sure I haven't done chemistry. Chemistry turns out not a big part of Bible curriculum.
Yeah, I could see that. Dude, I took both chemistry and physics in high school and then again in college, both of those. I didn't like either of them.
Kelsey's
anytime.
taking college trigonometry in the 11th grade. I was like, you are taking a higher level math than your dad's ever taken while you're a junior, and I'm a college graduate.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. And she had the audacity to ask me if I could help. I was like, no, I cannot help. Go ask your mom.
Well,
she
that's
has
your
a
teacher.
doctoral degree. Like, why would you ask the Marine parent? Like, go ask the other one. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Round number 2, we are going to talk a little bit about Governor Cuomo, because that piece of shit left his dog behind at the executive mansion.
Use the joke I put in the headline.
What was the joke? What do you want me to say?
You have a real bone to pick with Cuomo.
Bone to pick. Yeah, bone to pick with that guy. I mean, you would think of all the other issues that he's got going on. You got to know, in the age of social media, you do something messed up to a dog, people are coming for your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Straight
Absolutely.
up. Speaking of coming for your neck, that's what we've been doing with Afghanistan recently. So round number 3, we're going to give you an update. We're going to touch on some of the viral posts, some of the good, some of the bad. And then finally, in round number 4, we're going to get into a litany of little types of interviews. We're going to bring back Killzone, who is the major who just got his guy Zach out of Afghanistan. You're going to want to hear that. And we also have the Washington Post's Dan the Moth on, talking about the things that he's seeing and hearing around the Pentagon and the State Department. Really eye-opening. I think a lot of times we forget the position that we've asked wartime reporters to do. When he was going over how many times he's been to Afghanistan and the places that he's been in Afghanistan, I was legit like blown away.
Yeah, I felt like a real boot once he started talking. I was like, well, I haven't done anything. He's really...
They don't carry guns around, but they carry, they still get shot at. And the rounds still slap the same, they say, is when a reporter is getting shot at. They do say that. That is what they say. And they also say that you should go with Roman, our friends at Roman. Go to getroman.com/Barstool now to talk to a U.S. licensed health professional. That's if you want to get help with all kinds of stuff. Basically, Roman, like getroman.com, is essentially like a one-stop hospital, like for real. Like you can get just about anything from Roman right now, including erectile dysfunction. They have the comfort and privacy of your home, so you don't have to go and look a doctor in the face and be like, hey, I can't get boned up.
That's not that there's anything wrong with that, but
no, not that there's anything wrong. We don't.
It's a hassle, though.
I mean, it's happened to the best. If we've had anybody that likes to partake in whiskey, if you've had, I'll say it. There's one time where I was on these antidepressants. Erectile dysfunction like a motherfucker. I had to call my guy up, and I was like, "Hey, I usually have no problems with the old penis.
We've seen your emojis. We know.
Right now, I'm having to rip on this thing like I'm a fucking tug of war specialist at the Olympics to get it going. Right. I don't want to do that. I should have gone with getroman.com, which you could do right now to take care of your ED needs. If you have those, just go to getroman.com/Barstool. You're going to get the prescription is going to be 50% off with your first month of ED treatment. Make sure you have the confidence and control this summer. Be Roman ready. Get ready to shove your Roman helmet into somebody's vagina or butthole or mouth.
Mm-hmm. Anything really. Mannequin.
Well, not anything. You need to have some standards.
No, there's standards for sure.
Yeah. Do we sex doll shame on this podcast, do you think?
No, I don't think so.
I don't shame anyone for what they want to do behind closed doors unless they're plotting to kill other people or do horrible things to humanity. Whatever you want to do to yourself is up to you.
I do shame if you want to have a relationship with your sex doll. Yeah, I feel like that's okay.
That's weird.
Shame. Like if you're like, this is my boyfriend or girlfriend. No, it's not. You're just filling that thing up with goo and shoving it into a dishwasher. That's not a real relationship. All right, let's get going with the actual show today. We're going to start with a little bit of Naval Academy goofing because our friends in Annapolis, those are the cheater pumpkin eaters, right, Kate?
They absolutely are. And this is a pumpkin that is not going to get it. And by that, I mean a degree from the Naval Academy. Am I right?
Fight.
Right. The U.S. Naval Academy announced Friday that it kicked out 18 midshipmen following an investigation into allegations of cheating during a physics exam. The Navy's Service Academy said that in December of 2020, 653 midshipmen took the final exam for General Physics 1. That's physics, and it's taught by a general, I think, is what that is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
The test was thanks. They paid me the big bucks. The test was administered through the website myopenmath.com, and students were told that they were not to use outside source materials. However, after the exam, the school said it became aware of potential improper use of outside sources because of a conversation on an anonymous chat platform. So basically, these students were given like, hey, nobody used your books, even though you're all taking it at home. They were basically given a secret open book test and they still blew it. Loose lips sink ships. This is the #1 Navy rule, my friends.
And normally I would say for a subject like this, I don't care if you're cheating because every single thing in life is open book. It's not like you're going to have to like pull up physics knowledge off. You can always Google it. You can find the answer somewhere else. So I normally don't care.
Well, I will step in and say, having been a rocket scientist in my life, aka an artillery officer,
This is a gross exaggeration. Whatever is about this be said is a gross.
Listen, there's a science behind putting rockets in the air. Henceforth, I am a rocket scientist. No, but you have to know that stuff because you will not have time in the heat of a battle. And I imagine firing cannons from ships is very similar. In the heat of a battle, you need to know. And yes, granted, these days we have all these super high-tech computers.
That's not what a physics test is teaching you, Cons. They're not using that in Physics 101.
No, but there is a little bit of a correlation. So I
disagree. And I think you're just saying this because it's the Naval Academy.
I don't care about them.
You did not have the same take whenever it was the West Point guys that were cheating.
No, go ahead, Kate.
Well, I'll say this. If you're ever in a situation on a ship where some lieutenant real quick is like, hold on, I got to do this equation in my head. Your ship is going down.
You're already fucked.
You're in bad shape. You're in bad shape.
Yeah.
No, I will say,
offense.
Obviously people like to comment the Naval Academy. And yes, we had a little bit of an issue at West Point last year. And obviously this all stems from these students unprecedentedly taking all these types of exams and tests in their own homes due to the COVID situation and being sent home. But the argument that everybody that goes to West Point or Annapolis is the best, there's still, think about it like this. When you go to interview for a job, you can have all the right answers, right? And then you might get into the job and people find out, oh, wait, they might have been fibbing on some of their answers during the interview process because they don't actually work out. And I think that's what happens at West Point and Navy all the time is you have people that go through the interview process. Like you look at how many students get admitted on day one versus how many guys and girls actually graduate. That number is never the same. It's always drastically lower. So I think what you're seeing here is, yes, most of the time, the students at Navy and Army, and I won't say anything else about that other school out West, more or less, Sounds like somebody's still upset. They are they are great students and individuals, and they are going to go on to be great leaders one day. But I do think part of the process of that 47-month journey is weeding out those individuals who don't necessarily belong there in the end, who don't need to be leading soldiers or sailors when they graduate.
And there's not a single school in the entire world that graduates as many people as they start on day one in college. No college does that. Every freshman class is always going to be bigger than the graduating class. But with this thing going on, there's some stuff that I just don't care. If you are dumb enough to assign an online test and you expect people not to look up the answer, you're setting yourself up for failure. It's just not realistic.
Here's my thinking. Sure, it was a physics test online, but was it the Navy really giving them a top secret intel test to see who could keep their lips tight?
Or was it a character test?
Or was it a character test is what I'm saying, is what I think. Maybe it was a secret. A couple of those people could have gone intel, not anymore. Can't be trusted.
Exactly.
You can't be trusted.
I am surprised that they kicked their asses straight the fuck out, though.
Yeah, so this all told, 105 midshipmen were found likely to have cheated, breaking the school's honor code. And after that review, 18 were separated, were kicked out. 82 were allowed to stay at the school, but were put into a 5-month honor redemption program. I think that's like double secret probation. So
I love the term honor redemption program. We need to put cons in that from the whole
No.
what happened with not singing the anchors away.
Me joining the military was an honor redemption program. I got kicked out of school and arrested. I was like, oh no, I need people to love me again. I get it.
What happens at the rugby house though stays at the
rugby house. Some horrible things, let me tell you. Just talking about holes.
Whoa.
4 midshipmen were cleared. 1 is waiting adjudication. Huge shout out to me for saying adjudication correctly on the first read. The school did not disclose why some were punished more seriously than others.
I can tell you why.
Why?
Well, because they're each evaluated
better looking.
Yeah, that's definitely plays a part, whether or not you look great in your uniform.
Right.
No, but they're absolutely investigated on an individual basis, and they take everything into account. Like if you're a straight A student, you're going to get a little bit more leeway than somebody who is barely getting by. And other considerations are made based on your standing in your class, militarily, physically, and academically. So that's why. If you're a shitbag and you do something like this, they're not going to give you any sort of second chance. They're like, we gave them enough second chances, or her, kick them out.
Lest we forget, West Point, more than 70 cadets were caught cheating on a math exam past January. Air Force Academy said it was investigating 249 of its cadets for allegedly cheating. So this also, let me ask, which of the branches cheats the best? On their partners, definitely.
There's never been a recorded time where somebody at the Space Force Academy cheated.
True. I was going to say Coast Guard, but didn't we cover a story last year with the Coast Guard had some sort of ship test that people cheated on? But you're right. I would say the Space Force so far, they have to be the ones. Also, I went on ratemyprofessor.com and looked up the Naval Academy. So I was like, are they allowed to even rate their? I looked at the science professors, chillest Marine on the yard for the aerospace instructor.
Yeah.
100% would take again. Shout out Timothy Berry, the physics instructor, possibly part of this whole mess. Who knows? So I don't know what's going on down there, people. I don't know what's happened. A quick physics quiz. Okay, this is a fun physics question for the two of you. So let's see, officer versus enlisted. Who's got the bigger brain? I have a delivery truck.
Okay.
Big old honking delivery truck.
Yeah.
People forget I used to be a driver helper for UPS. Anyway, they do. I pull up to Barstool Sports. It's got a ton of chickens in the back of it. Okay. We're having a wing.
Are we talking numbers or are we talking actual weight? We talking 2,000 pounds of chickens or just a smorgasbord of chickens?
Well, here's wherein lies the question. I got 2,000 pounds of chickens.
For an actual time.
I pull onto, there's a weight thing outside. I pull the truck on. It says 2,000 pounds. All the chickens are standing on the floor. They're all chill. Well, then I look in the back of the truck, I go, ugh, and all the chickens start to go flying. Now, most of the chickens are in the air inside the truck. Does it still weigh the same? With the chickens flying, now not standing in the truck. They're in the air now.
No, because the load bearing is different.
Yeah, no. The answer is no.
Wow, you guys clearly never heard of Newton's third law, you stupid idiots. It is the same. When a chicken flaps its wings, it has to exert the exact amount of pressure and force as its own weight. So it would still be putting air pressure down that was enough to displace their weight. The truck would weigh the same no matter what the chickens were doing in the truck.
Yeah, but you didn't say that they were flapping. If we would have said
you just said they were in the air.
Yeah, you said they jumped. If they jumped and it was just, they're just like, oh, and they jumped all at one time. It's kind of like when everybody's on an elevator and you're like, okay, jump before you get there. And then technically you're experiencing weightlessness like you're in space.
Right.
I'm going to need Timothy Berry from down in West Point to come on the show. I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay. Who devised the APGAR scale?
Who devised it?
Who devised the old APGAR
who devised
scale?
It? The AFGAR?
APGAR,
long time still the AFGAR.
Yeah, long time
it is
Stanley
APGAR. It is APGAR. That was, I don't know what the scale does. That was a trick question. Final, what unit is used to measure the frequency of sound?
Oh, decibels.
Decibels?
Hertz.
Hertz? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That certainly does.
We missed that one.
Yeah, it certainly does. That was going to be the little
just for
joke.
Loudness of sound, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Something
I don't
like
know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's gotta be. I don't know what. I mean, that's gotta be it.
Final note. Oh, I was in community college trying to be a dental hygienist when Chaps found me online, and I was in my final week chemistry was one of the classes I had to take. I was failing it big time. So you saved me, Chaps. I like just left school and never looked back and didn't take the final because I was going to fail it. So
I always do feel bad because there could have been some kid who was super nervous about going to the dentist the first time, and he could have gone to dental hygienist Katie in Delco and just been like goofing and laughing his ass off, enjoying his strawberry fluoride, and now he has to deal with somebody who has a terrible attitude.
Yeah. I picture Kate kind of like Robin Williams and Patch Adams, but as a dental hygienist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, what are dental x-rays called?
X-rays.
Toothpicks.
See, that would have killed with a 7-year-old.
All right, let's move on to round number 2, which today is going to be brought to you by our good friends at Nomad Goods. I'm excited about this one because it's not often that you find like products that you think are actually nice that go around your iPhone. They sent me this little iPhone case. Cons, I believe you got the same one too.
Yes.
And not only that, but it's like a nice leather, and you can tell it's leather because it smells like leather. They also have a little case. It's for like your AirPod Pros. Look
at this thing.
Oh,
look at this thing. I'm holding it up on the screen right now. This is the nicest laptop case I've ever owned. And then at the top, it's magnets. So
I didn't even see that. I need to get that one too. You guys need to go check it out. It's Nomad. They use leather from Horween Tannery in Chicago that smells amazing, and it's climate neutral certified brand. Go to Nomads at nomadgoods.com/0 to see what living the nomad life it's about. That's nomadgoods.com/0. They started as a Kickstarter project in 2012 with the goal of building ultra rugged minimalist tools for the 21st century nomad. They're based in Santa Barbara, California. Nomad makes mobile accessories that not only look good, but are there when you need them the most. You're going to like them. Their quality. I beat the shit out of my cell phone, like throwing it into my truck, throwing it into the center console. This leather one doesn't even have a scratch on it like 2 months later, which is pretty incredible.
Well, I'm going to cut you off. I've been chomping at the bit to say about my Nomad Goods, the late at night breastfeeding. Okay. How does this tie into the ad? You're stuck in a chair and oftentimes you only have one arm available. And once you're down in the chair, there's no detaching the fella off your nipperoon. There's no whatever. They sent me they sent me a base charging station. Because once your phone's about to die, there's no like reaching down to the floor and grabbing the cord to plug it in, blah, blah, blah. I keep the charging station right next to that chair that I nurse the baby in now. And I can just plop it down and let it charge and pick it up, put it down whenever I need it. So I can do ZBT social stuff. I can do whatever, like whenever I'm sitting there, mostly just look at fart talk though. But anyway, their charging station, and it looks really good. There's a lot of ugly ones. It's like really sleek and cool looking. It's perfect for the babies.
So if you've been enjoying Nomad at night and Kate has been posting at night, make sure you say thanks, Nomad. Everybody say thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Nomad. Thanks, Nomad Goods.
Exactly right. Let's move on to round number 4, which is Governor Cuomo. He's fucking up on every level imaginable. He's staying with one of his sisters in Westchester County in the final days of his 3rd term, and recently has asked staff members in the executive mansion if anyone would like his dog Captain, who remained at the state-owned residence after the governor moved out last week. 2 state patrol police officers told the Times Union on Saturday that the governor had recently asked mansion staff members if anybody would be interested in caring for old Captain, a high-strung mix of Shepherd, Siberian, and Malamute. Has nipped a few people. What in the fuck is the deal with all of these politicians who have dogs that don't have any damn manners?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's all optics. They don't care for the dog. They have no relationship with the dog. Therefore, the dog does not listen and it behaves as it wants.
I think that's accurate for Cuomo. I don't think it's accurate for Champ Biden. I think Champ Biden absolutely went through it because I saw some videos of Joe Biden and Champ before he went into office when he was just running. And Joe Biden was sitting in his living room hanging out, and he went up and picked up a golf club. And as soon as he picked up the golf club, Champ got super excited, which shows to me this is how Joe plays with him. Like this isn't something that you could fake. Like the look on the dog's face was like, oh shit, dad's got the golf club. He's about to go hit some golf balls and I'm going to go chase him down. He was legitimately excited. Captain Cuomo doesn't even look like he knows who Andrew Cuomo is. Like when he starts walking around, he's like, who the fuck is this guy? This guy's a horny Italian. What is he doing here?
Yeah.
No. He's not
tough.
horny. He's just Italian.
Well,
Remember.
naturally, a senior advisor for the governor said no, it's just temporary because the governor, who is scheduled to resign from office on Monday, is planning to take a vacation. He's just going on and just kind of losing. No, if that really was your dog, you would already have a plan for you to have. There's a million
how big
kennels.
of a piece of shit do you have to be to make your staff, as the former resigned governor, take care of your dog?
Your scary dog. Buddy? Your dog that nips at people.
Like you obviously, if you were ever the governor of any state, you have a decent amount of money. Pay for your dog to go to a pet place. Don't make your staff do it. Like, I'm not going to call intern Bren. Like, if he was still an intern, and be like, hey, dude, can you pet sit for me? Like, that's messed up.
Maybe Cuomo's plan was that because Captain Cuomo is a Cuomo. After all, it's not his choice, but he's a Cuomo. Maybe his plan was, I'm going to leave this dog that everyone's scared of in the governor's house. And everyone's going to be too scared to go in there. And then it will still be the Cuomo governor house.
Or maybe he's upset because all this talk about being Italian, nobody's even offered him a plate of spaghetti.
Possibly it.
Nick, is that stereotyping?
I think so. I mean,
yeah.
Spaghetti would be like the last thing I bring up if I'm a true Italian. Would
chicken parm?
Or maybe some manigot.
Yeah, manigot. Yeah, they're icons.
Feel free to slap us anytime.
Not bad for the Irishman.
Yeah, exactly. No, but you know what? We've been pretty vocal how we feel about politicians in general, but I do think there's a sliding scale in terms of how we think about them. Cuomo's got to be just in the basement in terms of an individual that I think about when I think about politicians. I just have no respect for any part of this guy as a human.
Which is really, I mean, because of the way that President Trump was looked at by a lot of folks, in order to enter that stratosphere, and not even W had a terrible rep before Trump took office. He seemed like he provided cover, and Cuomo was like, I don't want any of that. I still want to be a piece of shit. I want that to be my legacy, is to be a garbage person.
Yeah. Terrible.
If Trump had a dog, what kind of dog do you think it'd be?
Didn't he have one though? I thought.
No, he's not a big dog guy. He's actually the first president in a long time, since I think before Jimmy Carter, not to have any type of animal in the White House, whether it be a cat or a dog. They didn't have any. So it was the first time. I would love to see him with a Shar-Pei, just the super wrinkly Chinese dogs.
I could see a Pomeranian. Something that the missus could.
I would picture him having a Great Dane, because I don't know. There's not many dogs bigger than a Great Dane. So he'd be like, look how huge this dog is. It's a huge dog that's ever been in the White House.
Nobody's ever had a bigger dog.
Nobody's ever had a bigger dog. Okay.
Nobody's dog's ever had pointier ears. Then
my Secret Service was walking him the other day. You should have heard about the poop he took in the backyard. Biggest poop ever at 1600 Washington, Pennsylvania.
Poop.
Enormous, huge.
Sleepy Joe's dog Champ could never take a poop this big.
No.
My final thought on this: how many politicians do you think adopt dogs just for the optics?
A lot. Absolutely.
A lot. I think they do everything for the optics. I bet they run little field fucking quizzes about what type of dog they're going to get.
Yep.
Oh no, you don't want to do that. You won't want to get a beagle. People think you're beagle, that you're just going to go out there and be a yappy politician.
Yeah. The retriever market's saturated right now in the political field. You got to do something else.
Everyone's got a golden
Are you
doodle.
insane? A golden doodle. Have you lost your mind?
Yeah. What?
Be more cliche.
But I do think that if you are a politician and you're trying to get a pit bull, you got to go with the one that represents your party. You can't, if you're going to be a Democrat, you got to get a blue nose pit. And if you're a Republican, you got to get a red nose pit. Those are really the only options.
Absolutely.
You know what? Hopefully, when I move into a home one day here in the near future, next couple of years, whatever, we're going to get a dog, and I won't disclose what kind of dog I'm going to get, but if I were in office,
way to keep that close to the vest cons.
Yeah, we want to keep that. No. We're talking about getting a Belgian Malinois.
Yeah, that'll be
no,
smart.
not a Belgian Malinois. What am I talking about? A Bernese Mountain Dog. I don't know why I just mixed those two up.
Same difference. Potato.
That's what Eric has.
Yeah, I think they're big and cuddly and they're cute. But wouldn't an American Bulldog be a great dog to have as a president?
Yeah, because they're big and they're adorable.
Marine Corps. Hello.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an English Bulldog.
Yeah.
All right, let's move into some actual topics that we
invalid.
might know a little bit about, and that's Afghanistan. Kate knows the most because she's actually been there. Let's do a little roundup of what's been going on. One, there is a lot of news that's circulating, and I gotta say, the story of the weekend for me was the mother who was escaping from Kabul, and she was on the Air Force C-17 flight, and she gave birth on that flight.
Yeah. On Saturday, soon after the plane landed at Ramstein, the Air Force said the mother went into labor during the flight, and Air Force medical crews helped deliver the child in the cargo bay of the aircraft. Again, as somebody who just had a baby and had all the drugs available to me, it was still a lot having that many people in the room who were nurses, who were whatever. I still had enough privacy. I had all the medication I needed. I cannot imagine the stress leading up to her even getting on that plane and then having a baby on that plane. Holy shit.
What is the altitude? What does that do to your like dilation? Do you think that makes it bigger or smaller?
It's colder.
I never.
No, it's colder up that high, and we all know those planes aren't
right?
insulated. Yeah.
So like if you wanted to go like and dilate as fast as possible, you go to like the ocean trench, right?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah. I'm just the crews who delivered the baby, a baby girl who was fine, who's going to do just fine. That's like
not
an
baby
incredible.
Girl, the listeners.
Not baby girl, the listeners.
But
and then I saw an interesting conversation start in the comments of the post that we put up about it on Zero Block 30. Would this make the baby? Are kids born on foreign U.S. bases?
Yes. So
could they run for president? Like, could they be?
Yes. So if you're born on any U.S. government soil, even in a foreign land, to include planes and things like that, is considered sovereign U.S. territory. That's why, like, if you attack a plane or something like that, if you disable a plane, that's the same thing as attacking the soil in the United States. Like, there is no differentiation. So I think legitimately this kid is a U.S. citizen. Like, if you're born on U.S. soil, no matter what the circumstances are, you're a U.S. citizen.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. I hope the mom's doing all right.
How incredible would it be if this kid grows up to be like president of the United States?
What an origin story.
What an origin story. Exactly right. Like this, it would just be so many things. The way that these parents are going to be processed is different. Talk about lucking out and pulling 777s, having a baby whenever you're in the middle of a refugee crisis in your home country, and you happen to have any time in the last 10 months you could have had your baby, and you happen to do it on a flight where you gain U.S. citizenship for your kid. That's pretty damn good luck.
Incredibly unlucky and lucky at the same time. There's probably a big time major duality to
Not the way you draw it up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But
Kate, when you go through your birthing plan with your OBGYN, I can't imagine giving birth at 40,000 square feet in a C-17 next to 600 other people who are escaping from tyranny. I can't imagine that's the way you draw it up.
Yeah, no, it's slightly different vibes. That's Babadook. Absolutely. Big time Babadook vibe. Also, it was a whopping 871, not 600 something on that initial, remember that viral C-17 photo with all the Afghans who just, they were on the airfield and they all started running on the plane, and the Air Force, the airmen said, fuck it, let's go.
And really, what are you supposed to do? In that situation? They aren't armed. You're not going to shoot these people to get them off. And once they're on the plane, you only have 5 or 6 crew. Once they're already on there, they're on there. Like, you're already on. You can't tell them to get off. That's why when this command was like, we're going to charge these folks, the fuck you are. You're not going to get away with that.
Yeah.
If they actually did follow through and charge and try to strip these pilots and the crew chief of rank for doing this, the amount of backlash that would have happened from the military community maybe would rival anything that we've ever seen.
Yeah,
I think people would have gone bananas.
Well, people are already going nuts. Wow, they fit 600 something people on this flight. Excuse me, it was actually 823 Afghan civilians. 823.
But the best part about this little story is all the airplane hardos that know stuff about C-17s that don't normally get to talk about it. It's like me whenever I go really into depth about like dog psychology. No one gives a fuck about that normally, but these people saw their opportunity for a C-17 talk. They're like, look, that amount of weight fluctuate. It could really affect the airframe.
The ball bearing to the
other-
Fleetfoot-Nugan under the Steven Sky.
And then other people were coming in like, dude, we stack literal tanks on top of each other in the back of these areas. I don't think 600 Afghan kids are as much as a fucking Bradley.
Right.
Like if you can carry a Bradley and several other vehicles, you're going to be fine.
One fun note too, air traffic controllers, one of them responded over the air with "holy fuck" when the number was estimated over the radio. So that was a fun little nugget of info. But yeah, 800
appreciate that honesty.
823, nearly 1,000 people on that fucking plane. Wild.
And I heard, I have not been able to confirm this, I heard that a former chief of staff for the Air Force actually submitted, while he's retired, a 4-star, submitted all of those crew members for Distinguished Flying Cross.
Good.
I think that's fantastic. It's fantastic considering what they did. And obviously initially in the face of potentially being reprimanded, and they just said, we don't care, we have to help these people. I absolutely would support that.
And not caring is such a beautiful sentiment in situations like that, where, you know, you have what's technically right. You have like your standards and your protocols and your standard operating procedures that you go by. But deep down, you have this personal gumption and this gut call that you have to make in that moment. And who are you after the fact to call into question the decision that's made on the ground? Like that is something like people that armchair quarterback, that kind of thing. I feel like if you're in charge there, do you take action if something fucked up happens and people die and people get hurt or something like that? Yes. But if nothing happens, no harm, no foul.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you don't have time in a lot of those situations to really hem and haw and consider a lot of different options. You kind of just got
typically you have all kinds of time to haw. Not here.
No, there's no hawing to be had. No. You may hem a little, but not, you can
get away with a slight hem.
Slight hem,
two
not a full haw.
You've gone overboard.
Well, speaking of hemming and hawing, there still is about 100 miles north of Kabul, the Panjshir Valley. The Taliban has been massing forces in and around the province, which we talked about in the last episode. It's the only one not under their control yet. Masood's son, basically Masood Jr. and the Afghan VP are open to negotiations so long as the Taliban promises an inclusive government, but are ready to fight to the death if the Taliban tries to invade the valley.
And did you hear what their reasoning was where they were going to stand up an opposition force? Did you hear what it actually was?
No.
The Taliban had said that they were going to issue mask mandates for all the different provinces around.
Oh, right.
And they were just like,
they said, I would never.
It was all the other things are fine, but mask mandates.
No go. Finally, I'll get to the heart of what's like happening as we've got a week out, and we'll talk about that in an interview coming up. But as of the airing of the show, there's 1 week left. The Taliban will not agree to an extension of the evacuation mission from Afghanistan, warning of consequences. So they're saying, as of August 31st, you are gone. If not, there's going to be problems. That move would mean extending occupation, and that's a red line to them. So hard no-go. On the other hand, at the same time, over the weekend, President Biden said that he would not rule out extending getting people out of there beyond August 31st. So,
and I think that that's the statement that you have to make if you're President Biden. You can't just let the Taliban be like, this is what you're going to do. Fuck out of here. We're leaving because we want to, not because you made us.
Right.
Like the fact that the Taliban is like dictating the terms still makes me fucking sick to my stomach.
Yep, sick to my stomach. And over the weekend, about 11,000 people were evacuated out of the airport at Kabul. They see no reason why that pace can't continue from here on out, because we had been hearing there's been 8 hours of no planes coming in and out, blah, blah, blah. But now apparently they're getting a good flow. Things are going well. I've been getting some really good DMs. I got one from people at a base in Germany saying, man, everybody on the base in their free time is stepping up to volunteer to help these Afghans as they land. Everybody's donating everything they can. People are spending time to play with the children. People are spending time to do this, to do that. People are going just above and beyond to make space, to make room, to do everything to make these Afghans comfortable as they, who knows where they're all heading next, whatever. But
getting all kinds of pictures of people holding babies, kissing babies, rocking babies, doing all kinds of stuff with babies. And it really is heartwarming. It kind of feels like that for the military community, at least, that unification that took place after 9/11, where everybody has the same goal. It's about being a helper. It's about doing good things. And that's exactly what they want to. I also found it incredibly interesting and something that I had even forgot existed, where it's kind of like the cable or the network news, ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS, they're all owned technically by the US government, and we lease out those lines of communication. The same exact thing happened with the airlines. And I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but each one of the major US airlines has been essentially militarized and called in and be like, United, you're giving up 2 or 3 planes. You are American Airlines. You, like the different airlines in the United States, are all having to give up planes and pilots to go to Ramstein, Germany, to go to the other places where these refugees are going to perform transport of these folks back to the United States or to wherever their ending location is going to be. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. It's very interesting. Imagine being a United flight. I mean, I guess that's how you get your money back from all these airlines poaching military pilots, is like, yeah, hey, bitch, now you're going to fly for us for free. But if I was them, if I was the refugees and I knew that they're going to call in planes, I'll be damned if I'm getting on fucking Spirit airline from Ramstein, Germany. I'm not going international on Spirit. You need to bring me fucking JetBlue. You need to bring me United something.
I agree more. And then finally, to bring the mood way down, I've been seeing people online saying, oh, it's overblown. These journalists and troops are overblowing what's happening. Not true. A NATO official has said that at least 20 people have died in and around the airport in the past week alone. This includes the 2-year-old daughter of an interpreter who was trampled when a crowd panicked after gunfire went off. An Afghan security guard was also killed in a firefight between unknown gunmen and Afghan forces, the North Gate at Kabul. And that interpreter and her family have decided they cannot leave Afghanistan now. Obviously, the whole family is now going to be left behind there because she said, I can't leave my daughter behind. So there's horror stories coming out. And if you look at any of the images, do your own research, you'll see that it's not overblown what's happening. So hopefully in this next week, I'm on pins and needles. We'll get into it again in these interviews coming up, but to see how it goes down, it's pretty crazy scene.
I think
it's in order to talk about how everything's actually going down, we're bringing in the Washington Post reporter, Dan Lamothe, who's been on several times already. And this interview from him is going to be brought to you by our good friends at Simply Safe. When Simply Safe Home Security's founders, Chad and Eleanor Lawrence, designed the first security system in their kitchen, they did it for a very personal reason. Their friends had just had their home broken into and they were struggling to find a security system that was simple to set up and will make them feel safe again. Making people feel safe is what Simply Safe has been doing for 15 years. A passion to protect those that drives every single engineering detail in its product, but motivates every interaction with its customers. And the thing is, Simply Safe is just making it easy. It takes about 2 minutes to customize a system on their website, which is simplysafe.com/CBT. Simply Safe has highly trained security experts ready wherever you need them, whether that's during a fire, a burglary, a medical emergency, or just when you're just setting up the system. As our listeners, you can get 20% off your Simply Safe security system and get your first month for free when you sign up with the interactive monitoring service. Just visit simplysafe.com/ZBT to customize your system and start protecting your home and family. That's simplysafe.com/ZBT. Here's Dan Lamothe from the Washington Post. All right, now back on Zero Block 30. We're privileged to have Dan Lamothe from the Washington Post again. It's been a while since you've been on, Dan. And I think a lot of that kind of coincides with what's been happening in our world. Like we've talked about it a lot. COVID really slowed down a lot of military news, whether it's deployments, training cycles, all types of things slowed down. But now, very clearly in the world, things have picked back up. So your reporting has picked back up as well. We wanted to bring you on because you are the Washington Post right-hand man when it comes to anything and all things defense. And you've had some really interesting perspectives and some really interesting, I guess, questions that you've been asking people who are big players in the Department of Defense over the last few years, one of which was Admiral Mullen. Before we get into all that, I want to start out. Can you give us a timeline of when the Department of Defense knew this thing is really getting away from us?
I think if you want to go back to when did they think it could get away from them, I think there was a fear of that months ago. I think even back prior to Biden taking office, there were warnings made to the Trump administration saying, you can do these things, you can negotiate with the Taliban, you can draw down numbers farther, just buyer beware, there is, you can make that decision, there is goodness in pieces of that decision, but it will go bad quickly. And I know that was a warning, a rapid collapse of a government. And I think part of the problem here is what a rapid collapse of a government is I think somewhat subjective. There were a variety of assessments with, ranging from a year to a couple months to a couple weeks. And I mean, I think the reality was it did take a while for it to collapse, and maybe people didn't just really catch on that it actually was collapsing in slow motion in front of their eyes.
And
going back months ago.
And I don't want to put a lot of blame or like any blame on any of the administrations, but I want to ask you this, because when President Trump first took office, it's pretty widely known that Mattis and a bunch of the other generals who were on his staff looked at him and said, you're going to create a vacuum if you pull out, because he initially wanted to pull out right when he got to office. It was an initial desire. Do you think this negotiation that we're speaking about with the Taliban, where 5,000 members of the Taliban were released to include the dude who's essentially the president of Afghanistan now, do you think that the way that the Trump administration comprised their Department of Defense added some of this, I guess, calamity to what's going on right now, the way that they operated?
A lot of our reporting would suggest that the negotiations with the Taliban and President Trump very openly kind of growing frustrated with the plan that Secretary Mattis and others had landed on early in the Trump era, I think undermined negotiations. The deal they ultimately signed, I think, provided some safe passage for U.S. troops to get out. I mean, they did. They were down to basically done last month. And, that was hailed as an achievement. General Miller was given kudos by President Biden, by Secretary Austin and others for pulling it off with not a single casualty in more than a year. But based on the sequencing of things, it just became really challenging, perhaps bordering on impossible, to then also get out all of the Afghan allies that we have there, the State Department and others. And I know there's also some frustration in the Pentagon and with some U.S. troops that the State Department didn't seem to quite necessarily grasp the immediacy of the threat. There was New York Times reporting yesterday that said that Secretary Austin told them, like, as things were falling apart around them, you got to get out now. And the embassy was looking for another 72 hours before they were going to evacuate. I didn't have the precise timeline that closely in my previous reporting, but I did have defense officials being frustrated that the embassy wasn't immediately willing to go. And ultimately they did, but like it almost felt like somebody was shaking somebody by the lapel somewhere in this equation.
And I feel like most military members, when you look at it from a veteran perspective, which is the point of this podcast, essentially, we look at it, and from leadership, you want accountability. Like, you're taught from day one in the military, accountability is very, very important. Have you seen anything in the State Department or Department of Defense the last couple of days that is leading you to believe that they're going to accept some sort of accountability? Because right now, the initial looks is like the Trump administration wants to put it all on Biden. The Biden administration wants to put it on Trump. And in truth, it's a colossal fuck up for everybody involved.
Yeah, I mean, one of the frustrations, I think, covering this sort of thing is that there are so many people kind of carrying their own particular partisan bucket of water on this, and I think that the reality of the situation is you can draw a through line back to decisions made the last administration, and then carry that through to some of the specifics made in the last few months about sequencing of events. How do you get out Afghan interpreters? How much are you trusting President Ghani in Afghanistan? Like, one of the equations here, pieces of the equation here was President Ghani apparently asked President Biden, please don't make it look like you're getting out so quickly. So they didn't. They kind of were slowly fading out on the State Department side. And then, the Taliban makes their move.
Ghani, he gets out quickly.
Ghani punches out. He's gone. And then the Biden administration's left holding the bag for security in Kabul as the Taliban closes in.
I was wondering too, speaking of accountability and the State Department, a lot of the stories we're hearing from interpreters is that they have been trying since like 2014, 15, 16 for years and years and years, well before this even was on the horizon, like a whole decade before the pullout we had time to do. Is there going to be any accountability for that? Is that going to be an issue? Is that an issue that you see being brought up? Like, hey, why were they stuck? And what's going to happen with, because what I'm seeing is a lot of the contracting companies that were doing the paperwork for them don't exist anymore. Who's left holding the bag for that mess? Because that is one of the biggest stories coming out of this.
Yeah, there are layers to that one. One is that the numbers on SIVs that Congress allowed was pretty low throughout. They bumped it up several times in phases, but almost immediately, they would hit the next, the next button, they would hit the next ceiling on it.
Right.
So that slowed things down to a point. Size of the State Department, the number of people that left the State Department during the Trump era, that took away a lot of potential bandwidth that could have been dealing with this problem. That played a role. And then coming in, like the Biden administration very early on, like within the first month, acknowledged that this was a concern they wanted to deal with. Okay, piece one, and then piece two, you're dealing with a military withdrawal, announcing it in April, and at least in messaging, if nothing else, you don't yet have the interpreter equation solved. And then they make a big announcement in July, late July, just a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, and at that point, it's like, everybody's already at the door or through the door. The military was already basically gone. And it's just the timing on a lot of things just didn't sync up well.
And do you feel like a lot of these, I want to say losses really, are in part because so often we will tout that civilians are in charge of the military, but with that, they're also politicians. Those civilians that are in charge are politicians, and looking at them and what they're trying to accomplish, it almost is like you guys were so worried about the political win when the actual win would have been to do it the right way instead of trying to cast blame here or there. Are you getting any type of reading of the tea leaves that suggests that there's going to be somebody held ultimately responsible, somebody, whether it's Secretary Blinken or whether it's the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff or Secretary Austin? Do you think one of those main heads, because it's not going to be President Biden, do you think anybody in the executive branch is going to be experiencing, I'm going to be the one carrying the water for this mistake?
I just don't know. I mean, there have been discussions on the Hill and otherwise about, who should resign or who might resign. Like those sorts of conversations are happening. I mean, it's mostly sort of hypotheticals at this point. I mean, ultimately, I think probably everybody survives, and then it's probably wholly unsatisfying that somebody that feels like accountability needs to be a resignation somewhere.
Right.
That sounds about the way it usually plays out. Yeah, everybody gets away scot-free.
Just blame the Lance Corporal. I mean, that's what they should really do.
Yeah.
Just blame the Lance Corporal somewhere.
I had one more question, and I'm looking up where I thought I saw it, but the deadline is a week from now when we have to be out. And a lot of people are wondering, what is that going to look like? What is that exact moment where the deadline is there? Because the Taliban has said, if you're not out, it's going to be a problem. But Biden said, and I'm looking for the exact quote today over the weekend, he sort of alluded to maybe we would be there a little bit longer. Are you hearing anything in terms of what that final day is going to look like? August 31st deadline?
No. And the short answer is I'm not sure they know yet,
right.
let alone me knowing. I don't think they can necessarily predict it yet. I think one problem here is, we've seen real progress in the last day or two. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, toward actually moving large numbers of Afghans and Americans out.
Mm-hmm.
Today the number was like well in excess of 10,000. 11,000 with the military alone, more with charter flights. They need to do that day after day after day for a while to kind of get at the problem in a serious way. while still having this deadline hanging over their head. I think there had been a hope, like piece one and the piece that got discussed a lot last week was, would Biden extend? And he wouldn't really be too specific about that until the last couple of days. And I think part of that was probably a concern over how the Taliban would react if he said, "Oh yeah, we're staying until September 10th, whatever case."
Right.
That's an equation here. I mean, the Taliban has never been more powerful when it comes to these discussions. They actually have a seat at the table.
Right.
And I'm sure that's got to be frustrating for a lot of veterans. I mean, I've been shot at by the Taliban too. I mean, I get why there's frustration here.
Yeah.
My concern when I look at this now, like we're in kind of the sweet spot where there's a lot of good things happening. We've all seen the photographs of Marines holding babies. We've all seen, like we've got people flowing into like 4 bases stateside, 3, 4, 5 bases overseas. They're really opening up the spigots right now. Problem becomes at some point, your folks would definitely know this. If it takes several days to get 6,000 troops on the ground, it's going to take several days to get 6,000 out. And that's not even counting what do you do with the interpreters that are still outside the gate trying to get in, or the other Afghans that think they deserve a shot. And also, if you're to pull those people off, like at some point you have good security on the outside of the airport right now. As the numbers dwindle, that is a challenge. So what that ends up looking like on the back end, I mean, I think that's going to be hairy.
And there's certain situations that we're seeing, like you referenced all the different Marines, soldiers, say they're airmen, not just from the United States, but from our allies too, that are giving children water, that are holding these babies, that are getting them over the walls. And in reality, that's propaganda in the purest of forms, like on our side, and we're guilty of it too at ZBT, because just outside the frame of those pictures is Taliban beating people with chains, murdering folks. We're going to have Killzone on it just a little bit, and he'll talk about how one of the drivers that he has picking up his guy, Zach, the father-in-law, was shot at his home because they were helping out. So even though we're seeing these really nice humanitarian stories, the reason why these humanitarian stories exist is because there's catastrophes happening just outside the frame of these pictures. And I think once we leave Afghanistan totally, those pictures of the abuses that are happening are going to take center stage in the world. Have you heard from anybody in the Department of Defense about contingency plans when we do leave? What capabilities are we telling the Taliban that we're going to have as far as drone strikes and military operations when we actually do vacate the area?
They're not forecasting anything right now beyond sort of this vague over the horizon counterterrorism presence. I mean, assumedly that includes some combination of drones, manned aircraft to a degree, although every time you put a manned aircraft up, they're also worried about making sure they've got some sort of personnel recovery option available. I know that was a hang up last month when like they still had options to carry out airstrikes, but there was a period of time in there where they didn't have personnel recovery on the ground. So they were uncomfortable using a lot of fighters. They eventually brought back in temporarily some personnel recovery and put it at HKIA. And that was when, like things were kind of calm. So that's gonna be a factor. Like how much can you do and still feel like you have confidence that your own people are safe? Second piece of the equation is, yeah, you can hit any speck of the earth. You're the US military, I got it. But the intelligence community relied heavily on the military for security for years and years and years there. They've pulled almost everything they have out too. If you don't even have a US embassy, you can't even collect from there. So your ability to just have a clue on what's going on in the countryside, if there's some significant Al-Qaeda training camp somewhere, you might not catch it for a while.
And we saw that when we lost the embassy in Syria, like that was a big problem that is getting intel on the ground. And I want to transition a little bit to what's happening in the Department of Defense with high-level members like the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Secretary Austin and Admiral Mullen, who was in charge of the operation when Osama bin Laden was killed. we're hearing so often, oh, hindsight bias, where we should have left after bin Laden was killed. We should have left 10 years ago. We should have left 15 years ago. Are you getting frustration from career members of the DoD that were like, that is the most fucking obvious statement, and the fact that it's just now getting acknowledged by high levels of government, where they're like, just troops and even the reporters that are in the room, like, you got to be rolling your eyes like, come on, what are we doing here?
There's a certain amount of, I think, people feeling boxed in at the time. You know, you can't acknowledge necessarily obvious statements, because if you do, it's, you know, an aha. And I think Mullen's thing yesterday is an example of that. You know, he's in an interview. You know, it was a reflective moment. You could hear some regret there.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, by the same token, I think the next thing a lot of DoD leaders, current DoD leaders included, would say is, you know, decisions were made back then. You know, we didn't know it would turn out this way. And I mean, I think that's the mixed, you know, like, I have conflicting feelings on that. Like, it was going to be messy no matter what. I completely grant on that. But I mean, we did lose a whole lot of people between 2011, 2012, and now. I remember sitting on a fob up in Kajaki, Afghanistan. You know, they had fought their way up that highway a few months prior. You know, and I'm sitting there in spring 2012, and, you know, they were already making plans to collapse back down. It's like, well, what's going to become of this highway that, you know, like, it's still not quite secure. Like, we know the Taliban's over that next ridge line. And it's like, we'll see, you know, like, that's our mission. Like, you know, even back then, and I remember writing stories to that effect, and getting pushback, you know, pushback, you know, like, oh, this is going to hurt, you know, this is going to hurt morale. This is going to hurt the effort. You know, and, you know, meanwhile, the sources in the story were like a battalion commander, a sniper who had been there, like, you know, people I was running into on follow-on trips that were on their way out of the deployment on the back end.
Yeah. And I know that you usually report and you don't do a whole lot of editorializing and giving your opinion, but as somebody who has been shot at by the Taliban, and you spent significant time in Afghanistan as well, are these mistakes from the Department of Defense and the State Department over the last 15 years, is that something that you personally want to hear them acknowledge? Because I feel like for so many of us troops that have spent time on the ground, whether it's in Iraq or Afghanistan, it's important to hear that you're not crazy. Like, the things that you saw and experienced, and you're like, what in the fuck are you guys talking about? To put it out there, and some acknowledgement. Yes, we made a mistake. We made mistakes all along the way, from people like Mullen, from people like Austin, from people like the chairman. I think it's very, very important and needs to happen. Would you agree with that?
I think one of the things that became increasingly frustrating to me over the span of especially 2014 and on was the complete lack of transparency on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is not just Trump. This is Obama. This is, you know, like, this has pervaded numerous years and numerous administrations now. It was a problem even before then, to a large degree as well.
There's no pure example of the military industrial complex than what we're seeing right now in Afghanistan.
I would point to my colleague Craig Whitlock's Afghanistan papers reporting, where, you know, they fought that out in court for, you know, a couple of years, you know, just to get basic interviews that, you know, I mean, you know, on the record, black and white, so-and-so said X, compare that to what they said in public. Like, those sorts of things were, I mean, yeah, I mean, as a human being that has been there, as a human being that pays tax dollars, as a human being that talks to Gold Star families and, you know, people who have, you know, left a piece of themselves there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, we were talking about that on the previous episode, how at our level, Lance Corporal boots on the ground, sending up a report, essentially saying, you know, hey, this program that we're doing or whatever in Marja, it's not working. And then you see a report on Marja and the highest level is saying, everything's going great. You know what I mean? And so it's like total lack of transparency. Yeah, everything's going well. And it's like, they're not telling the reporters what's actually happening, like what we're, whatever. So I'm sure as a reporter, that's.
I found value in embedding where you didn't always get a perfect view of it. Sometimes that was, they were going to send you to a certain unit. They were going to, like they would compress the timeline on how long you were there. Sometimes there were people you would like, here's your 5 people you can interview. Sometimes you had free access.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, baptism by fire, my first one was spring 2010 in Marja. And, I didn't go for the taking of Marja as a rookie. I thought that was biting off more than I could chew. I went for fighting season. And, at the time, the belief was that they largely had it. I arrived late April, May 1, as things completely went off violence-wise again. And, it was like, oh yeah, I guess this government in the box thing hasn't really taken.
Right.
And after fighting their guts out for another whole summer, Marja was pretty peaceful in 2011. But then as soon as they started pulling back, it started going back. I remember talking to an Afghan general in 2018 when I went back down to the old, whatever they call the old Leatherneck now.
Right.
When you had that secondary Marine presence there, and they were talking about the election they were planning, and it was like, okay, so where will the Afghan forces concentrate? And he had this quote, and it was translated, so I'm not sure it was exactly verbatim, but the way it was interpreted to me was more or less, we're not going to put Afghan soldiers in Marja because all the people largely have left Marja, gone to Lashkar, and we're not going to guard the trees. The Taliban are there. So it's like, okay, so like having been in Marja 8 years prior to that point, I was just like, man, what a full circle situation.
Yeah, crazy. Wow.
It is crazy. The entire situation is crazy. Dan, we know you're going to be on top of it, working for the Washington Post and doing all the things that you do, being busy as hell in this season. Hopefully, when this is all over and the actual sharp deadlines there, you can take a nice vacation to some place where they don't have a whole lot of guns where they can shoot at you.
Yeah, man, we'll see.
Yeah. You deserve it. Yeah. Ben, honestly, thank you. I'm grateful to all the reporters who do what you have done for, like you're talking about, back in 2014, back in whatever. Thank you for your service, Dan. Truly. It's such important work.
It's often felt like it was put on a shelf, with politics taking the primary news slot on a lot of TV newscasts, and especially in that post-surge era where it kind of became easy to be like, oh yeah, Afghanistan, oh yeah, still war, we're good. Without actually looking at nuance. So that was frustrating for me a lot of the time, just feeling like, okay, well, that's going to be shoved back inside somewhere. And, the core, I kind of looked at it as like, okay, I'm the vegetable guys. I'll keep offering up vegetables. If somebody wants to read it, great. If not, somebody had to do it.
Right.
And,
that's why they call you Dan Broccoli Lamothe.
On the back end, I've just been so happy and relieved to see the way that some of the Western journalists, Susanna George from the Post, T.M. Gibbons-Neff, and Mujib from the New York Times, some of the folks that have made sure to the best of their ability that the Afghans that worked with them, supported them, kept them safe. They're doing everything they can right now to get those people out too. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And before we talked to Dan, I hadn't really thought about all the times that reporters had gone, but he had been in and out of Afghanistan for the better part of 12, 13 years at this point, which is a bunch. And people don't think about all the security personnel, the embassy staff, all the support staff that's there, the people that are running the passport shops and things like that, that are living in Kabul for the most part, living out in town and seeing those people. And I would say that after traveling and living in Japan, when you live in an area and you see how people in different countries live every single day, it gives you a different appreciation for that culture. For me, the Japanese people, I love Japanese people after spending so much time there. Their kindness, the culture was infectious, the things that they do. And you definitely experience that whenever you're dealing with Afghans, like having the relationship of what we're going to talk about soon with Killzone, Thomas Schumann. Whenever he talks about his relationship with them, he always goes back to how Zach, whenever he's dealing with the Taliban knocking on his door, trying to legitimately kill him and his family, to include his young daughters, he asked Thomas how his family's doing, like the selflessness of these people. Kate, I'm sure you saw it whenever you were in Afghanistan. if you're sitting there eating with a family and they only have limited amount of food, they are still going to offer you the food before their family eats. Like that's just the way that these people are. And so having all these people, for folks, some of these people that work in the State Department, you can be in Afghanistan for 15 years working there in the State Department. They're seeing friends, families, countrymen that they've grown to love, and they know that they're going to be treated poorly because they're seeing it. And I mentioned it in Dan's interview, where we talk about how it's just so unbelievably gutting to know that really what we're putting out, the Marine official channels, the Air Force, the Army putting out, is kind of like propaganda, really. Like, because just behind the screen, people are getting beat with chains while they're waiting. They're getting threatened with gunfire. They're firing AK-47s into the crowds. They're already setting people on fire in different provinces for being helpers of the occupiers. Like it's just a gutting set of circumstances where we want to look at the positive things, because I think that's human nature, where you want to look at the light, but in reality, the darkness is all consuming there as well. And it's going to continue to get darker and darker and darker. And while there is positive stories to look at, like the child that's going to be an American citizen, people getting out by the thousands now, there's, for every person that gets out, there's tens that are going to be left behind there. And it's absolutely gutting to know that those people are going to be dealing with the Taliban for the remainder of their lives, no matter how long that might be.
Well, I just also wanted to say, speaking of Dan, he mentioned during that interview that he was in Marja the same time I was, and he befriended, when I was there, it was tough fitting in with some of the infantry groups. I got shuttled around. So it was particularly nice when another Marine would extend an olive branch and be like, here, come sit, have dinner with me, blah, blah, blah. And one of those guys for me was an EOD guy, Sergeant Ian McConnell. And he became a really great friend over there. Just one of the kindest, most gregarious, affable people you could ever meet, with an incredibly, again, EOD and Marja, stressful job. And when I got back home, we continued just as friends, messaging, how you doing, blah, 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 what's going on. And unfortunately, he took his own life, July 2nd, 2011. And the reason, the first ever message I have, it was Dan wrote the most beautiful. It was something I really struggled with, because there was signs that I missed quite clearly. And Dan had written this beautiful article, Goodbye to a Brother Gone Too Soon, I think it was titled, because he had also befriended him. This guy, Sergeant McConnell, was so wonderful. He saw this journalist out there and befriended him too, and was just this wonderful person. And he wrote the most beautiful article about Sergeant Ian McConnell. And when I read it, it meant so much to me that, oh, you knew him too, and you knew how great he was. I slid into his Twitter DMs. I think this was back in, this is years and years ago now. And Dan's been in my Twitter sphere ever since. But it's just a reminder too of what these journalists go through. They experience the losses. They experience the losses too. And they're, I don't know, they're just so vitally important. It could be
even more so, right? Like not more so than your losses is not what I'm trying to say. But I mean, they are privy to information that you as a corporal would not be. Like,
right.
They can go and talk to higher level commanders and get a bigger picture of what's going on. So their frustrations at time of seeing what's actually happened and what we're doing, they're one of the few that see what the junior troop is doing, what the junior troop is reporting, and then what they're being told by the higher ups, and they don't mesh together at all. And that's got to be incredibly frustrating. We're going to see a different side of the entire operation in the next interview, where we bring in Killzone. We had Killzone on a few weeks ago, where he was talking about his interpreter, Zach. This is a story about how Zach got out. But I want to point, before we start really getting into it, Thomas did this completely outside of the military. This was not a Marine operation. This was not a DOD operation. This was him being a person who cares about people, who cared about him and trying to protect him. And the way that he's gone about it, and the way that he is not credit seeking, not attention seeking, but doing it just because it's the right thing to do, really is awe-inspiring to me. And it's one of those stories that I'll hang my hat on, that people in the military are some of the best people in the world. And his love and his desire to be sleepless, to continuously tell his family that they have to take a little step back because what he's doing right now is so important. His wife stepping up and taking care of their kids more so than she'd normally have to, with him working so many hours and being up around the clock and going through these stressful situations. And then him being so articulate in his desire to see people really have health. And then he just showed, after we got done with the interview today, he posted a video of Zach talking about how thankful he was that the US government was helping him get out so his family can continue to survive. This is a story that I believe will be a blockbuster movie at some point, because when you hear some of these details about what happened, it's really unimaginable what they had to go through, what Zach went through. Imagine you are surrounded by the Taliban. You know, because they sent multiple letters to your house and to your family, that the moment that they find you, they are going to torture you and they're going to kill you. You have those messages. Then you're going through the heart of Kabul during this time when the Taliban is setting up checkpoints, and you don't get in multiple times, and you're bringing your kids screaming while gunshots are going off, and you don't get in. This story is one that every American should listen to and appreciate the freedoms that we really have. Here's Killzone. All right, now in Zero Block 30, we're privileged to have Thomas Schumann back. We're saying his name. Last time we didn't say his name because we thought he had a little anonymity. That's gone. It's out the window. There is no anonymity anymore. You're everywhere doing all kinds of stuff. And I got to say, man, like, from the things that I've seen just from your initial story about Zach to where it's at now, it's been really remarkable. And also it's like a microcosm of what's going on, because it's not just you that's doing it. There's several other organizations that are out there doing it, to the point we're calling it like a digital Dunkirk, and which is just awesome. The things that active duty Marines are really doing outside of their scope of being a Marine, and not just Marines, all the branches of service. But it's been really incredible. So since the last time you were here, you talked about Zach, you talked about your interpreter. Walk us through what actually happened in Kabul and how you got Zach out of Kabul.
Sure. It's very interesting to be on the leading edge of this digital Dunkirk. I think it's worth taking just a quick look at the timeline. You and I went to the Marine Corps Ball together with Erica in November of 2017. At that point, Zach had already submitted his application a year and a half before that. So that feels like November 2017. I don't know to you. I mean, that feels like that ball was a long time ago.
It feels like a lifetime ago, honestly.
Okay. And so he had already submitted his application a year and a half before that. So we submit that application in early 2016. We work on it for several months. After several months of rejections and appeals, we both kind of just think, well, there's no way around this, and we kind of let off the gas at some point in late 2016, early 2017. We kind of just put a pin in it, and
it wasn't just because of Zach or anything that Zach had done, but this was like a stopping of almost all the visas that were coming out of that area. They just completely stopped from 2015 really till 2019, early 2020. They stopped processing any of these visas.
Well, the issue that tens of thousands of these applicants are facing and we're facing is an HR verification letter. And so I'm on the Facebook groups with all the interpreters who are applying through the SIV program. In 2009, when the program first came into existence for Afghan interpreters, it was 1 year required service. In 2015, they increased that to 2 years. Well, Zach had 9 months with the Marines verified through a contractor. He then went and worked for almost 2 years with Army SF guys, getting paid mostly cash. And the contracting company that he did work through went defunct. And so when you say that they stopped processing, they didn't technically stop processing, because some people definitely were processed throughout that time. But Zach, like the majority of others, could not track down this HR verification letter, which was a hard stop. There was no way around it. There was no waiver. It was, and so when you go into these, when you speak with the interpreters, I mean, tens of thousands of them are saying, I can't get this HR letter. What can I do? And the answer was really nothing. There's no way around it.
Which might be the first time in military history or State Department, there's no waiver. There's always a waiver, whether it's for heroin, meth, whatever, there's always a waiver.
I have had a couple criminals in my platoon throughout my time, no doubt. And yes, it was really frustrating. So fast forward to the announcement in last April when the president said, we'll for sure be out. I re-engaged Zach and I said, what does that mean to you? And he says, it means I'm dead. It means that if you are not here, if the U.S. forces aren't here, I'll be dead. And Zach, while we were in Afghanistan, the Taliban came over the net because we had killed one of their fighters and we took their ICOM radio off them. And the Taliban came over the net and said, Zaki Nulo, we know who you are. We know what province from it. We're going to kill you. So for over a decade, he's been persecuted. And so when I asked him, what does this mean to you? He said, well, sir, I just received another letter to my father's house that they're looking for me. It means I'm dead. And so starting in April, I was writing the congressman, I was writing the senators, and I started to use social media a little bit to kind of put some pressure on this issue, because I attempted to work through all the proper protocols and all the proper channels, and it yielded zero results. And so my mom is a little crazy, but very determined lady. She writes the president, she wrote the vice president, and she wrote the Chicago Sun-Times. So in June, the Chicago Sun-Times just calls me and says, hey, your mom won't stop bothering us. What's going on? And I tell this story in June to the Chicago Sun-Times. And Senator Durbin actually, during a confirmation hearing with Secretary Blinken, says, there's a Major Schumann in my area. He's got an interpreter named Zach. Are you going to get Zach out? And this is a conversation happening in June. Secretary of State says, I got it. I'll take Zach for action. Okay. Months go by, nothing is happening. And I start to increase the amount of media engagements, letters that I'm speaking at this point to dozens of congressmen throughout each week, attorneys. And I think you can go back to my Instagram. You'll see that in June 12th, I post the Durbin interview with Senator Durbin's interview with the Secretary of State. And
that was the first time it had came on my radar. Like, that's when I started getting tagged in your post and be like, hey, check this out. What's going on here? Can you guys amplify this voice and do this thing? And I started looking into it and I was like, man, this dude's doing some stuff. I hope it gets accomplished.
So June, we start really a big social media blitz. July 29th, I'm on the Zero Blog 30 podcast. We're talking about this. Really, July 15th was a major kind of event where I talked to a buddy who's running the flight ops there. And I said, are people who aren't in Kabul, what's going to happen to them? Are we going to tell them to leave and get to Kabul, or are we going to go to them? And he said, no message is going to go out. And if they aren't in Kabul, they aren't getting out. And I'm like, okay. So I tell Zach, I said, hey man, you got to get your family to Kabul. And he's like, well, I don't have any money to do that. And it's too dangerous. My province is already taken over by the Taliban. So I started GoFundMe. I send him over $5,000. And this was the first kind of major operation. So this is the middle of July, where for 4 days, I'm not sleeping because Zach is making this harrowing escape from Kunar to Kabul.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, like what that actually looked like? Because I think it's hard for us to really wrap our brains around what it would look like to be somebody like Zach moving from province to province and trying to get to a safe location with your family. It legitimately feels like an HBO Max special that is taking place, and how he would have to do this.
It is made for movie, thriller, horror film. I don't know what you want to put it in. Lifetime movie now, maybe, who knows? But at the time, the Taliban was not providing these assurances of safe travel, even though many of these promises
they're fake. Yeah, they're not real.
But at that time, I mean, the Taliban was. I mean, that was the same time that the Taliban executed those 22 Afghan soft guys. So, I mean, it was. I mean, and the thing is, Zach has to keep some of these documents to show that he's worked with the U.S. forces. So he has to, and so it's just this balance of having some type of verification, because he's getting to Kabul, he can't wipe everything. And at the same time, the Taliban was searching phones, searching through bags, and you're obviously raising some eyebrows when you're bringing your whole family from Kunar to Kabul in the middle of what is the Taliban takeover. And so, he did a leaders recon. He went to Kabul ahead of time, tried to find an apartment. That in of itself was a huge logistical challenge, because obviously there were tens of thousands of Afghans pouring into the city every day. So I had to send him some more money, end up sending him $10,000 so that he can find an apartment. Then he's got to go back, get his family, bring him. I mean, it was, there were several moments through that journey just getting to Kabul where it was touch and go. And he gets to Kabul about July 25th, the family's there, and he starts to try to get their passports. He gets 4 of the 6 passports after I sent him $1,800, because they said when the passport office was saying, we'll get you your passports in 4 months. Obviously, at July 25th, 4 months was not a date that we could really work with. They said, but if you give us $1,800, we can get them to you tomorrow. So I sent him $1,800. He goes to the post office.
Which is just such bullshit that's the way that things happen. I mean, to 4 months to 1 day just because of some money, like, man, what are we doing here?
So he goes to the post office the next day. They've got 4 passports. They don't have his daughter's or his wife's. He goes to the post office the next day. They've got his daughter's. By the way, at this point, each day, the post office is becoming more and more inundated and overwhelmed, where Zach is getting to the post office at 3 a.m. and the line is already hours long. And he's spending these kind of really dangerous days all day in the line at the post office, getting to the front, no food, no water, no bathroom, gets to the front and they say, we're too busy, we can't find it. And so finally we get 5 of the 6 passports, and we're still working under a timeline where we assume we have till the end of the month, that we have until end August 30th. We think we've got the time. And so we're still trying to press to do this properly, get the passports, get the visa approved. If you have a visa approved, you'll receive a nice message. It'll say, come to the airport. They'll put you on. This is kind of some of the assumptions we're still working on. And then August 15th, August 14th, he's at the passport office when the Taliban start landing in Kabul. Mm-hmm. And it was Nightline was at my house on that Sunday, August 15th, to do a story. I had not gone to sleep the night before they showed up. I was not tracking what time they would be here. I not shaved, wearing my Crocs, not good. You can't record. I'm gonna get NJP here. Give me a second, and let me get this shit. And they in real time captured our first failed rescue operation, and that operation was, right now. And so again, when you're talking about this digital Dunkirk, I was using the digital space since June 12th, I think, is the first time I tried to bring and rally some support around Zach. And now it's 2 months later, and I post, if someone can get Zach, if someone from 2-1 or 1-8 can get Zach, and that was kind of my first post of an appeal, and it started to draw a lot of attention. And I'm filtering thousands of messages that started to come in, 1 for people to request to help their interpreter, 2 from interpreters who are on the ground. Mm-hmm. And then also people willing to attempt to support. And so we build this coalition, and we're using Signal and WhatsApp, and it felt like I've run operations before as a platoon commander, as a company commander, and I've run life or death operations as a platoon commander and as a Afghan advisor and a JTAC on my second deployment there. So it felt like that, but it was actually more challenging in that I'm the S1, I'm compiling these rosters, submitting all this paperwork. I'm the S2, continuous intelligence collection. I'm the OPSO, right? I'm developing all the courses of action. I'm the S4, I'm doing all the logistics, and then significant S6 stuff, right? Doing all the communication. And then I'm the commander because I'm making the decision what course of action are we going to go to? And the responsibility of that is on me. And so I start to post the stuff online. Immediately, I'm already catching flack about OPSEC and shit, and everybody has an opinion. And I'm the, Zach is really the guy in the arena, but I'm the one that's been running these operations since July 15th was the first attempt. But, since 2016, I've been working this issue. And now all of a sudden everybody wants to have an opinion about what's the proper way to, and so I'm getting all these messages about how I should or shouldn't be doing this. And
all while sleep deprived and going through it and trying to do the best you can, and school and responsibilities during the week and all that.
In the middle of a PCS, the movers were unpacking my house while I was running this stuff. I got 2 kids under 2. Fortunately, my wife was a real G throughout all this and just held down the fort and allowed me to stay in mission focused. And everybody is risk averse. Everybody's saying, don't do this, just have him wait, just wait. Or we need more assurances. He's got to have this perfect escort. He's got to have and I'm like, everybody is giving me these inputs, and I'm like, there is no perfect plan. Right. Everybody wants to wait for this perfect plan to materialize, and all these plans are bad. They all are bad. They're all inherently super risky, and they all could very well result in death. But we have a 70% solution. Let's execute violently. And so the first failed rescue op went Sunday, August 15th. I was put in contact with the company commander on the deck there who's running the ECP. He says, send them here. My guys are there. Go now. And so I said, Zach, go. And he goes, I need a ride. I'm like, Zach, you got to walk. No one's coming to get you. And so he walks with 4 kids under the age of 5, 2 bags, his wife, walks, about 3 miles to the airport, gets there. As he's getting there, that's when the initial airport breach happened, where all the people flooded on the tarmac. So that gate where they were processing people, where my guy was, they closed the gate. My guy comes off comm.
And how is communications for you there? Because I imagine like there is, like you mentioned, being in like the JTOC whenever you are deployed, and that is some of the most stressful times that you can have as a leader, because the way that we operate typically as a leader, at least whenever you're like 04 and below, you want to be there. Like you want to be a part of it. You want to make sure everything goes well, but you'll have gaps in communication. And I imagine those gaps in communication that you're receiving felt like an eternity whenever you were like in between updates.
Sure. You want to be at the point of friction, right? And not being able to be at that point of friction this is my first time, because as a platoon commander, I was very much always forward. When I was JTACing, I was very much always forward. And so, yes, this was a different feeling where I had to, basically I'm running the ops from the COC. And the communication with Zach over WhatsApp was always, of course, more reliable, right? But comm will go down, and comm did go down. And at the moment that Zach gets there, comm goes down with friendly forces on the deck.
Because I would imagine like there with communication, it's got to be essentially like going to a large NFL football game and you're trying to use your cell phone there, because that airport and that area must have been overwhelmed with communication from their towers and things like that, and overloaded where they're not used to having that much communication that's going through. So you're dealing with those problems. You're dealing with folks that are on the ground. It's getting violent. It's getting dangerous. The Marines are trying to get people in, are seeing hundreds of people and having to identify the correct interpreter to bring them in. Just an incredibly difficult task in every single way imaginable.
And they're going in and out of River City, so when the River City, so you're familiar with, but essentially that they actually turn off everybody's phone. They turn off the system for everybody. And in that moment that the airport was breached, all comm was ceased. No one was allowed on their phone during that time, because it was obviously an all hands effort to regain control of the airfield. And so Zach's my guy's off comm and Zach's saying, I'm here, the gate is closed, what do I do? And I have to go with my last update, which my guy says, get him there, I can get him in. And Zach spends almost 14 hours that day at the airport outside of the gate, and no food, no water, nowhere to go to the bathroom. And finally, the Taliban starts to disperse the crowds by shooting into them. And Zach walks back with his family after 14 hours, very dejected, very tough day for all parties.
Were you able to actually speak to him, or was it all via text?
He was sending me some voice memos that you can hear the panic in his voice. And on the second attempt, he actually sends me some videos. So he goes back August 15th, August 16th at this point, and we spend about 24 hours reconsolidating and developing new courses of action. At this point, a British officer from social media reaches out to me, says, I've got a guy on the ground that could at least provide him transportation, because Zach basically said, I'm not walking there again. So enter a new character, complete Afghan stranger named Lamothe, and Lamothe is now agreed to put his life on the line to drive Zach to the airport. Well, I get a message from the company commander. He says, go now, time now. This is August 16th or 17th. And Lamothe picks up Zach, drives him to the airport. Again, it's just a series of tragedies. It's a series of, we were so close and then gone. And he gets to the airport. The Marines are processing. He's getting out of the vehicle. A huge rush goes again to the gate. They close the gate. And this time Zach actually, there's a picture where you could see a Lance Corporal, and he's this close, and he's trying to FaceTime and get them on the phone with me. But literally both times, as he arrived to the airport on attempt number 1 and 2, moments before he gets there, a situation erupts. They close the gate. So they close the gate. He's saying, the Marines won't talk to me. Please have somebody talk. And he's sending me a video. And during this video, he's holding his daughter, and rounds start going over their head, and his daughter is crying, and you could hear rounds snapping over his head. And this guy Lamothe is like, the Taliban keeps shooting at me to leave. I don't want to leave him. What should I do? And after the rounds started going back and forth, Zach jumps in Malade's car, goes back to his apartment. While Lamothe was driving Zach, the Taliban went to his house and killed his father-in-law for supporting this operation. So this guy doesn't even tell me this. I don't find out for days later that his father-in-law is killed because the Taliban know that he's out there supporting an Afghan interpreter. So now we've got failure number 2. And now Zach is basically saying, I'm not going to the airport unless, you've got 100% assurances, and my family can't do it again. My children are injured. My wife has been injured. I can't go again.
And that's not something realistically that you can say with 100% certainty.
Correct. And so we developed 4 courses of action. One was
went beyond the tertiary plan. Love it.
Yeah. So for attempt number 3, the best, most ideal course of action is that a special operator team goes and gets them and brings them back, right? And we had allegedly a package being approved where that was going to be the case. Again, insane amount of digital Dunkirk stuff happening for Zach's case to get up to JSOC type approval stuff. Right. And so that is the COA that everybody wanted to execute. They just said, let's have them sit there until someone goes gets them. I'm like, okay. COA number 2 was there's a secret gate and it's unidentifiable, but if he stops at this person, does a challenge and pass at the secret gate, that someone will let him come out and let him in. And the thing is, Zach is it's very difficult to get Zach talked on to these places in general. And so there was a pretty high degree of certainty that if we got him to this course of action number 2 gate, that we would get him in. But the complexity of the link up plan made it, not great. COA number 3 was the Marine, again, company commander says, my guys are at the gate at this time tomorrow, send them and I'll go out and get them, which we've done twice now with failing. And then COA number 4 was an Air Force major. She is stateside participating in this digital Dunkirk. She's doing incredible work. She again hears of my case because of social media. She says, I know it's called the East Gate. The most of the gates that people are talking about here is the South Gate, which is an Abbey Gate, and East Gate, and then a North Gate. And she says, and the East Gate's pretty identifiable. So unlike COA 2, which was some secret gate, the East Gate is like there's people at it and it's manned. She says if he gets to the East Gate, he has to ask for blank and he has to give this password and they'll pull him right inside. And so I say, let's go COA number 4. There is a challenge and pass. It's an easily identifiable gate. We're going with that. And she says he needs to go now. They're waiting for him. So Nylabone picks him up, drives him through all the Taliban checkpoints. Again, super sketchy just to get through the checkpoints to get him there.
And this dude Nylabone's a legit hero too. Like going through after your father-in-law's already killed and still going back the next day is unbelievable.
When this British officer messaged me about Nylabone, he said, this guy has balls of steel. Confirmed.
Right. Yeah.
And he drops him off just south of the East Gate. Well, again, I'm not hating on Zach's ability to land nav here, but based on the fact that he has 4 kids, 2 bags, a wife, and there's tens of thousands of people, but he goes to the wrong gate. And I keep telling him, I'm like, Zach, you need to go 500, look at the gate that you're at, go 500 meters right along the wall, go 500 meters right along the wall, and you're going to hit the East Gate. That's where you ask for this person and you give this password, you will get in. And he says, sir, I can't go anywhere. I just need you to send someone out to get me. Sir, I can't go anywhere. They start shooting again. And I'm like, holy shit. And I cannot get him talked on. So I have a buddy who I went to the basic school with in 2008. He was a Marine Corps pilot, and now he's a pilot with the Air Force PJs. I sent him a message on Signal, and I said, hey, man, whatever you do, I need you right now. And he was in the command center at that point. He's like, I can see the crowd where he's at. He's like, it's going to be almost impossible to get him. And I'm like, dude, I need you to go. And so he grabs a PJ buddy of his. They run to the gate, and now we're in a WhatsApp between this guy, this pilot, Zach, myself, and he's telling Zach to look up to the gate. He says, I'm in black. I'm wearing I got a yellow vest over my flak jacket. I've got a helmet, NVG. Zach, look for me. Cannot correlate, cannot get eyes on. Finally, I had sent him a picture of what Zach's family was wearing that morning, and he knew Zach's son was wearing a blue t-shirt. And he says, Zach, put your son with the blue t-shirt on your shoulders. Zach, put your son on your shoulders. And that's the last message we get. That Zach is attempting that, and for almost 2 hours, no comm. And I told everyone, clear the net. And 2 hours later, he sends a message in front of the Saturday for the Boys flag. He says, we just got his kids some water, some chocolate. They're inside. He had to jump the perimeter, go into the crowd, and pull. And he said Zach was standing right next to a Taliban checkpoint. And he said, Zach had to have some real courage to be holding his ground there with the Taliban pushing everybody in that area. And so this guy jumps the wall, jumps the post, goes next to the Taliban checkpoint, pulls this guy out, and gets them on a manifest, and ultimately gets them to Qatar.
And what were your emotions? Because after having all this, and obviously this is Zach's story and like the rescuing of Zach's family, but you being so invested in this and wanting so much, did you have that huge sigh of relief, or was it almost like, I can't believe it actually happened and actually worked?
Yeah, it was all of the above. I mean, when you're running this a life or death operation, and it's the burden of command, right? Like, right. You are the one that is making these decisions. And when you have failed twice and almost got this guy killed twice, and there already are casualties involved with your operation. I mean, after that second failure, I had some real soul searching. My head on my kitchen table, just feeling very close to not knowing what to do. And so that's when I post the picture of Zach's family that day. And I kind of say we were so close, and I posted their face, and then every Karen jumps in the comments, "You're going to get him killed. Great job. You made him a target. Now the Taliban." And it's like, I've been in the Marine Corps for 13 years. I know what OPSEC is, right? I have done a serious risk assessment. I know that this puts a target on him. By the way, he already has a target on him. And in my calculation of this risk assessment, Zach is living on borrowed time.
Right.
That there is no Zach if we don't get him out anyways. And so the idea that I'm going to be the guy that gets this guy killed, I'm like, motherfuckers, I've been working this operation since 2016, and now everybody's got an opinion about how to tell the man in the
and
arena.
Also, let me celebrate, motherfuckers. This is a big deal.
This was before.
Oh, okay, all right. And I have a question for you about like your own self-preservation, because this becomes so public and it's in so many different news articles and so many different news segments. If this goes horrifically, were you ever concerned that it comes back on you in your career, like acting outside of the capabilities or outside of your Marine Corps responsibilities? Were you ever concerned, like, if this goes real bad, this is going to affect me, my family, and my career?
Yeah, so I've always had a philosophy, you don't die on every hill. You got to find what hills you're willing to die on.
Don't make your last ditch stand in the wrong ditch.
And a couple times in my career, I've been willing to put my rank on the table for people who I believe in. And if you aren't willing to put your rank on the table, you shouldn't wear it. And so this was one of those cases where it's, if I don't stand for this, if I won't put my rank on the table for this, then I just take it off. I don't deserve it. And so I understood all the consequences associated with a failed, and I understood what putting his face out there meant. And we were living on borrowed time at that moment. And so it was every Hail Mary, it was every kind of, and so pathos is an important thing, an emotional appeal. And how do you create pathos in a story? You've got to have a character. And what does a character have to have? It has to have a face, right? And so by putting a face to this story, now comes my English professor at the Naval Academy is coming out, right? I had to put a face to this story, and in conversation with Zach, by the way, we came to the conclusion that we got to risk it all, full send only at this point. And so we put him out there, and yeah. But after that second attempt, man, that failed attempt, I was so. When you're saying how did it feel when he was, I mean. Yeah, the sigh of relief does not do it justice. I was so grateful is what the overwhelming gratitude for so many people who rallied around this cause and supported. For example, Zero Blog 30 reposting this stuff. For example, the hundreds of people who have been supportive, the thousands of people who donated to GoFundMe. I mean, I was so grateful that so many good people, to include Afghans, Malad, to a random British officer, to so many people rallied around this case. So I was just so thankful that so many people rallied around Zach, to include the Lance Corporal. More than anything, the Lance Corporal out there has been given this Sisyphean task, this impossible task. And just like Lance Corporals and young infantrymen have always done, they're just out there figuring it the fuck out, and that they're out there holding the line in an impossible situation. I have so much gratitude for them. And so really, I think I was overwhelmed with how appreciative I was of Zach's courage, and all the people who came out and supported us and got him across the finish line. I think that's the overwhelming feeling. And
if it's a private moment, that's totally fine. But the first time that you actually got to hear Zach's voice again, and he got to hear yours, what was that reunion like, knowing that he was safe, you knowing and he knowing that his family was safe as well?
Yeah, it was just a message, and I said, you're safe, brother. You're with the Marines now. And he said, I'll see you in America, sir, and with a little USA flag emoji, and that to me was a pretty special moment. And then yes, a phone call as soon as he could make one, and just Zach has been never thought about himself throughout this. And he just says, it's your tireless effort, sir, who saved my family. Thanks a million, sir. And throughout this is indicative of many Afghans in general. How's your family doing, sir? How are you doing? This guy is literally in the fight of his life, and he wants to know how are my kids, pretty special moment to be able to talk to him.
I'm sure that he's going to find out soon, because I'm sure you guys are going to have a nice reunion tour where the whole squads get to meet each other.
Cannot wait to link up on the deck on this American soil. It'll be, I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, Major Schumann, thank you so much for joining us and doing all the things that you are. We really appreciate it. And I said it, but I want to say it to your face. You're everything that we want Marines to be. And I couldn't be more proud of you.
Hey, man, that means a lot. And I really do appreciate Zero Blog 30 calling so much attention to such a important issue. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
There we go. Again, I don't know what to say after something like that. There is nothing that can really be said. I'm just incredibly proud that Thomas wears the Eagle Globe and Anchor, and to share the same uniform and the same perspective on humanity with him is something that is fantastic, because it gives me hope that we have a brighter future ahead of us. I think that what he's doing is incredible. We'll also be talking later this week to another gentleman that is doing the same type of thing and has helped rescue countless families there. And there's going to be a dearth of Afghan citizens that come to the United States that are going to owe their lives to people like Chris Davis and Thomas Schumann, and they wouldn't have it any other way. And even though they do owe them their lives, they will definitely say, they do not owe me their lives. This is what I was required to do, and this is what I was responsible to do. And I love every single minute of that. And not just, we've highlighted some of the Marines, but Thomas talked about the Air Force officer, the officer that was involved in from the UK, and what she did and allowing them to go to a certain gate and giving information, and how everybody just came together, to the Lance Corporals and the specialists that are on the ground actually going outside the gate into the devil's mouth essentially and pulling them out, and having those people, incredible things all across the board that the military members are doing outside of the military chain of command, which is really, really special. Let's move in.
Hold on, I don't want to move on yet, because I also want to talk about what Admiral Mullen said. But first, let me ask you both this question. How much of this will we take back as a military, as a country? And although I absolutely not saying anything nuts here, this is very, very terrible, but how much of this will influence how we train and how we act when we go overseas in the coming years, and beyond just what's going on in Afghanistan? How much do you think this will influence our tactics, influence how we maintain relationships with other countries, and just overall act as a country and as a military going forward?
If history is any indication, not at all. Like, we saw the same exact things happen after Vietnam, like the same tragedies that we're seeing. It's almost a mirror image. Hopefully the people that are going to be in charge, because the difference here is that I think this generation, we're seeing generations that came after 9/11 who have a dedication to service and the ability to access information like has never been seen. And I think that is going to be key. The officers and the senior enlisted that left Vietnam did not have the opportunity to gain the amount of information that we have now. So I think that will be the biggest difference, is that we have the information and we can act on it.
Right. I think we have an opportunity to act completely different because of how much of everything has been going on is now seen, not just by the military community, but by our population at large, but especially in the military community. When you have more of a visceral reaction when you see a picture versus reading an account of a situation. So I hope that although history does not bode well for this, I hope we buck history and buck that trend and see an improvement in our military and in our country's foreign policy overall.
It would be dope ultimately if we didn't have to occupy another area.
It would be dope. Be pretty dope.
That would be pretty awesome. Sweet. We did talk about Mullen a little bit with Dan Lamothe. Okay. But Cons, if you had anything that you wanted to add, feel free.
The only thing I would add is it's just refreshing to see ownership and saying, hey, I was wrong. It's okay to have made mistakes. It's okay to have been wrong. And admitting that, I think, takes a great deal amount of character. And I was happy to finally see somebody at a leadership level that high to come out and say something to that effect.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say to that end is I wish that it wasn't like acknowledging that you went against Roger Clemens 10 years ago and he was difficult to hit. Like, I feel like if you do it very much post-game press conference, it weighs a lot more.
Yes.
But we know that you struck out 10 years ago. You saying that you struck out 10 years ago is just an acknowledgement. Where was that acknowledgement at the time? And even if you realized it 2 years after Osama bin Laden was killed that we should have left, why the fuck did you wait 8 years to say something? Like, and I think that is where we as a community need to demand more answers from across the board. And I saw it. It's strange how the American psyche switches back, right? Like in our comments, whenever we first started talking about this, there was almost no, of course there was some, but there's almost no political blame being cast. It was a recognition that everybody across the board, whether Republican or Democrat, fucked up. And now, even days removed, it's going back to extreme partisan debate. And that's where we're going to fail. If we can't get past that point, we're always going to circle back to the same exact area. And people that have served in more than uniform should know better. You should really know better. You've served in 4 different administrations who operated essentially the exact same way. Know better. It has nothing to do with who everybody that's been in charge fucked up. And I don't understand the aversion to saying that at all. But let's move into a little bit of save rounds and alibis. We'll start with you, Nick. First of all, I'd like to apologize for all my Italian marks today. I don't think you're that horny.
It's quite all right. The La Familia will accept your apology.
Okay.
Yeah, my save round is first day in the office, first day coming into the city in a while. Went swellingly, but at lunchtime I got a little cocky, left without an umbrella, and got caught in the monsoon. It was about.
I like that you didn't. That's the way I know you're taking your ZBT producer responsibility serious. Is not having an umbrella.
I got a little cocky. Walked out there, the skies opened up, and I walked in soaking wet back into the office. First day.
There you go. I love it. And I'll be seeing you soon. As soon as my save round. Baby went to daycare. I made a big fuss about the baby starting daycare. He immediately got sick. And then they're off this week, the daycare. So I paid for a whole month. He went 5 days. Also,
you need to investigate what sort of money back you can get, especially if one of the weeks is they're just off. And
you know Kate well enough to know she ain't doing that shit.
I won't.
She's way too nice and conflict averse to be asking for a refund.
Oh man, my kitchen sink and dishwasher are broken now, going on 2 weeks.
I have a hot dog at my favorite seafood place, so she didn't have to ask us not to go eat seafood.
Yeah, my sink, my kitchen sink, I've been unable to use. And dishwasher with a baby for 2 weeks now. And my landlord's like, well, the plumber's on vacation. I don't know what you want me to do about it.
So he's the only plumber.
It really sucks that that's the only plumber in the greater New York City area.
She didn't respond back to me today. This morning, I'm like, hey, any word on the plumber? He's supposed to come today. I'm about to say, so sorry to bother you again. Yeah. Any chance he's gonna? So yeah, no, I will never.
You need to go into a truck, put on some sunglasses, and do a vet bro rant like at her ass.
Yeah. I didn't serve in a quagmire for 20 goddamn years. Anyway, something like that. But no, those are my safe rounds. There's a duality to, I catch myself thinking, I'm sitting there with so many hours to think, especially late at night with the baby, blah, blah. And Afghanistan's constantly on my mind. And then the next thing, I feel like such an asshole because I'm like, my sink's not working. Oh, my baby's not in daycare today. And
but that's a trap, Kate. Yeah. That's your brain being a dick to you because what you're going through at the moment is important too. and you can't look at the biggest catastrophes on planet Earth and be like, well, mine doesn't compare. Well, no shit, it doesn't compare, but it's still bad to you in the moment that you're in it.
I was thinking if you're also a veteran out there or whatever, and you're doing the same
or
thing
if you're
to
a veteran
yourself.
plumber, come fix Kate's sink.
Come fix my sink. Gosh darn it. Anyways, those are my safe rounds.
Honestly, I bet you could go on Twitter right now and be like, hey, I need a plumber in the New York City area to come fix my sink. My landlord's a dick, and you'd have somebody at your house in 45 minutes. You could have somebody faster than TaskRabbit to have somebody at your house.
Pat went across the street to the hardware store and bought $100 worth of pipes and stuff. And I was like, don't you fucking dare, because if you mess that up, then we're in big kahuna trouble, pal.
If there's anything I know, anytime you have the chance to do a little amateur plumbing, you got to do it.
No.
Listen, if Mario and Luigi taught me anything,
film it.
Young age of 5.
Pat.
I'm not feeling good about it. So we'll see how that goes. This is my save rounds, the lamest save rounds ever. And just much love to everybody again, still getting so many DMs from helpers, people looking to help in all sorts of ways with the situation in Afghanistan. So,
and I promise we're trying to help everybody as much as we possibly can and putting you in touch with the right people and the right resources. And also, I think it's important to mention that there was obviously a very big uproar last week with everything that's going on in Afghanistan, but this is something that's going to take time. So we have to keep an eye on it. I think obviously we all know the news cycle moves so quickly. It's easy to move on to the next big topic that's bothering everybody. But what's going on in Afghanistan is not something that's going to be a quick fix. So we'll definitely do our best to keep an eye on that and keep everybody updated as best we can. And then a couple remarks with regards to shows. Chaps, do you actually think White Lotus was good?
Yeah, I enjoyed White Lotus.
There were parts that, the content making process, TV show process, like it was cool, but overall, I just kind of like a slog. I didn't really enjoy
what I did like about it was that there wasn't some super clean ending. I like that because a lot of times in shows we'll have shows that can be just, oh, it's over and everything wrapped up. I kind of like having open ending because that's what life is.
Okay, that's fair. And then also, I don't know, I obviously I knew this show existed, Amazing Race, because it's in season 32. I didn't realize that the week it premiered was the week of 9/11, and that affected its overall ratings because people were so adverse to other countries and travel. So that didn't bode well for their first season. Nevertheless, started watching that, has me thinking,
I believe that's when West Wing started too.
Yes. Well, no. It started right before, and then season 2 had started, or they were supposed to air. And remember that the first episode of season 2 just seemed like out of place. They wrote that episode special because they wanted to address 9/11. Remember, it was like the White House was on lockdown in that episode, season 2, episode 1. Mm-hmm. They wrote that. It was just totally off the cuff that they wrote that. So credit to Aaron Sorkin and his crew for doing that. But anyway, do you guys watch Amazing Race? Have you ever watched Amazing Race?
No, and I never will. It's a commitment I've made to the listener.
All right, that's fair. But it was interesting to me. Initially I thought, Amazing Race, you got to have these teams that you both got to be young and in shape and ready to go. Not the case. Not the case at all. It's a whole hodgepodge of individuals and types of teams that you wouldn't think would do well on this show, but in fact they do. So I'm watching Amazing Race. So if anybody else is out there who wants to maybe team up with me, because I think if I did it with Alex, we would kill each other, and that wouldn't bode well for my impending nuptials. So I'm looking for a partner to sign up for the Amazing Race. I think you and I would be, because also it's not really that physically demanding. There's not that much running. There's some physical.
I'll never run. That's going to hold us back.
I know. So, but see, here's the thing. It's not about that. It really is not about running. So I think we could do a good job together. So that's all I got.
All right. I don't have much that I haven't already said already. I am looking forward to brighter days when we have brighter news stories to talk about. But until then, keep getting those wheels up from Afghanistan. And if you're listening, I know so many people are and have said that they've listened from Kabul or around the globe. I just want you to know that we appreciate you. In a world that can often overshadow good by the enemy's news and the bad news that's out there in the world, just trust that we know that you're doing good things and that your heart's in the right spot and you're representing America and the military very, very well. And we are proud of you, and we are proud to have ever been associated with you here on this show. Sound the Retreat.